is CNN.
Live from Washington, Crossfire. On the left, Mike Kinsley. On the right, John Sununu. Tonight, Mrs. President, in the Crossfire, Anna Perez, press secretary to Barbara Bush. Elaine Crispin, former press secretary to Nancy Reagan, and in Los Angeles, Susan Estrich, campaign manager to 1988 presidential candidate Michael Dukakis.
Good evening. Welcome to Crossfire. The First Lady and the First Lady-elect met at the White House today. They even held hands. But Barbara Bush and Hillary Clinton are very different women. When Bill Clinton had dinner with congressional leaders Sunday in Little Rock, his wife was at the table. Was she just serving the peas? Not at all.
Talked a lot, knew more than we did about some things. I think they would agree with that.
In some quarters, the knives are already out for the first president's wife with a career of her own. Hillary Clinton is a Yale Law School graduate. Last year, she made 3 times as much as her husband. She's also been a leader in liberal social causes. Early in the campaign, Bill Clinton bragged about his activist wife.
When you think of Hillary, think of our real slogan, buy one, get one free.
Then came her notorious tea and cookies remark. After that, Mrs. Clinton's role in the campaign was limited to the Nancy Reagan-style adoring gays. But the campaign's over. What role will she have in the White House, and what role should she have? That well-known feminist Fred Barnes is sitting in for John Sununu. Fred?
Thank you, Mike. And let me ask Susan Estrich a question that puzzles me about the roles that Hillary Clinton will play. She obviously is a very serious political activist. She will inherit a very large role as a traditional first lady with many, many duties at the White House. She's also first mother to a 12-year-old daughter. Doesn't the role as political activist have to take a back seat to those other 2 roles, Susan?
Well, Fred, I'm the last person to tell any other woman how to do the balance. I think every woman out there, and many men too, who are balancing career and family and professional obligations, has to find her own way of doing it. I have no doubt that Hillary Clinton is going to be a good mother, and frankly, it troubles me a little bit lately to hear these conservatives, and maybe you're one and maybe not, saying, well, Hillary has got to put her daughter first, and that means she can't take an active, strong role in the government. I think that's ridiculous. I think it's up to Hillary Clinton to decide how she's going to balance those roles, and frankly, I'm delighted to have a person of her talents and abilities in the White House with her husband.
Well, the first mother role is one thing, but the first lady role, there's a traditional role there with ceremonial duties and a lot of other duties. Aren't those ones that she has to go along with, and might they not take time away from her being a political activist?
Well, I think she's going to have to decide which of them she's going to do herself and which she's going to look to other people to help her with. Look, I don't know if Hillary is a person of great taste in the home. I don't know if she takes a great interest in art and in furnishings and the like. It may well be that she'll have other people help her do that. I do know that she's a person of enormous talent and training when it comes to issues of children and family and education, and I certainly hope she finds time in her agenda for it.
Yeah, but aren't these duties as a traditional first lady one that the American people duties the American people expect of her?
Well, I think the American people are a lot more open, frankly, to the idea of a strong, dynamic baby boom woman in the White House who is very much her husband's equal in many matters. I think there are some knives out for Hillary Clinton, but frankly, from where I sit, it looks like most of them are in the press.
Let me ask both of you here. First, Elaine Crispin. Do you have any problem with Hillary Clinton sitting in on that meeting with the congressional leaders last week?
Not a real problem with her giving advice to her husband, but not necessarily at a meeting where special congressional leaders were called in for frank discussion.
I mean, it was at her house. There she is at the governor's mansion of Valley.
And there will be a lot of meetings with the president in the White House when President-elect Clinton becomes the president in January. And I think what Hillary Clinton will find out with all of the conversations now about careers outside of the White House for first ladies, she's going to find on January 21st she has a full-time job. As Fred said, and it's more than teas and receptions, and as Susan said, you know, decorating, those are little sidebars.
Perez, do you have any problem with her attending that meeting?
No, I don't. It was her house. But I'd like to get back to something that Susan said and Fred were talking about. Hillary
Clinton is the first mom, but Bill Clinton is the first father. He has duties as a father that he's got to balance with his professional life, just as any woman who has a job has to balance that professional life with duties at home. The president has enormous ceremonial duties, and somehow we expect Bill Clinton will do a good job of balancing the ceremonial duties and the duties of the father with being president. But somehow we think that Mrs. Clinton is going to have a problem here. I don't think so. I don't think so.
Don't complain to me. Complain to Fred.
I think there's a difference, though, when Bill Clinton was elected to do all these separate things as president. Hillary Clinton wasn't elected to do anything.
Job description. There's no job description for First Lady. The First Lady makes that job description herself. There are ceremonial duties, but she can take care of those if she wants to. The point is that if Mrs. Clinton wants to make policy in this administration, it is grossly unfair to her if the only reason why she can't get a job doing that is because she's married to the president.
Do you have any problem with her making policy in this administration?
I think she can be much more successful in influencing policy. She will be the eyes and ears to the president. She will be visiting around the country, and by talking to him, if she, in fact, is a paid political advisor, the president can't fire her.
There's no question of that. In fact, it's against the law for her to have a major job in the administration after Bob Kennedy.
She outdated and...
But I think she will be...
Oh, go ahead, say that.
I think the law is outdated, antiquated, and it was passed in a period when women were still expected, I can't believe it was only 20, 30 years ago that we were still expected to get into our pigeonholes. I think Mrs. Clinton has a right to make her own decisions about what she's going to do, and she set the mold in Arkansas. She was the head of an education commission in Arkansas that, if you'll excuse me, was one of the bright spots in that sorry record.
But I wouldn't go that
Susan
far.
Estridge, go ahead, Susan.
Let me jump in on 2 points. First of all, I think it's up to Bill and Hillary Clinton how they structure, whether she serves as his eyes and ears, whether she sits in the meeting, whether he briefs her afterwards. I think that's up to him and up to her. I mean, there are lots of aides who do sit in meetings. There are other presidents who prefer to meet one-on-one. I think they've got to work that out. And if Bill Clinton is a successful president with Hillary's help, he'll get reelected. If he's not, he won't. And it doesn't depend on whether she sits in the room. But the larger problem I have is with Fred's suggestion that somehow if a woman takes seriously her responsibilities for being a mother, then she's somehow disqualified from taking a very demanding job. It seems to me if you took that to its logical extreme, we'd have no women in the cabinet. We'd have no women in the Senate. Well, but why should Hillary Clinton be subject to a different set of rules?
But Susan, even last night at her speech at the Child's Defense Fund, she did mention, and I think a lot of First Ladies, Nancy Reagan with the drug work, Barbara Bush with the literacy work, Eleanor Roosevelt with the March of Dimes, have worked with children, and it's a very honorable cause. But perhaps maybe a First Lady in the future should be working with parents.
Well, that would be a good idea, wouldn't it?
Responsibility for their children.
Here's my problem with Hillary Clinton, and frankly, it was my problem with Nancy Reagan as well, and that was that she didn't have a defined role. Now, normally, you have unelected aides at the White House Chief of Staff, Domestic Policy Advisor. We know what they do.
But that's exactly
Shouldn't
why
Hillary
she should
Clinton
get a job.
come forward and define her role?
Oh, come on, Fred.
What area is she going to advise in?
Oh, Fred, come on. If Bill Clinton wanted to name George Stephanopoulos or Al Fromm or any other guy as his aide-de-camp with responsibilities across the board, you wouldn't go on television.
No, but there are clearly problems with naming family and spouses to influential positions in the administration.
I'm not suggesting he's going to name her. I'm suggesting that he doesn't need to define her job.
But for instance, if she takes a cabinet post, or if she wants one, you have the chilling effect of the president's wife being at the head of this cabinet post.
And on the other hand, perhaps, if she doesn't do a good job.
Exactly. But on the other hand, there are an enormous number of positions available in, like the head of a commission on children and family.
Let me ask both of you, press secretaries to First Ladies. John Sununu isn't here tonight to complain about the press, so I'll do it for him. Isn't it inevitable that at some point in this administration, like in every administration, she will be accused of being a Lady Macbeth, a secret power behind the throne?
It has ever been done.
Isn't that always a story, and isn't it always
And when news in
largely
Washington
phony?
is slow, she will be the headlines. I mean, it goes without saying.
Well,
but Anna, I mean, you've been there for 4 years. I've been there for 8. We know how busy we have been. Now, the First Lady, as the Clinton said, you get 1, you get 2. With the presidency, you also get the First Lady's duties. But they come hand in hand. And I say to her she should be able to do anything she wants, have a gift shop in Georgetown, do anything she wants. where does she find the time to effectively
Because you make
do them?
priorities. You make priorities. You decide, this is what I want to do.
And her
with this bully
special
pulpit,
causes with her children
this.
should be her priority.
Anna, we're going to have to take a break now. When we come back, we may hear some more press bashing from Mike Kinsley, but at any rate, we'll ask what happens if Hillary disagrees with her husband on an issue and speaks out about that disagreement.
Crossfire is brought to you by GE. From plastics to financial services, we bring good things to life.
To experience the true joy of cooking, it must be pursued with reckless abandon and total disregard for the inevitable splatters, spills, squirts, and the occasional splash. Fortunately, GE's new profile cooking appliances have ingenious quick clean features, like lip-top ranges, self-cleaning ovens, easy wipe surfaces, and sealed burners. So they clean with just a wipe. GE's new profile appliances are so easy to clean, they take the joy of cooking to new heights.
Gone are the days of the 2-week vacation. The average American getaway has sadly dwindled to 4.1 days. But what hasn't diminished is our need to escape to a quiet, stress-free environment, like the luxurious interior of the Acura Vigor. Don't think of it as a drive to work. Think of it as a 30-minute vacation. See your Acura dealer now for details on the Acura Vigor Luxury Lease Program.
Read the back label on this Columbia Crest Chardonnay, and you'll find that it's the sunny climate of the Columbia Valley that makes these wines so wonderful. For further reading on the subject, may I suggest Columbia Crest Merlot, Columbia Crest Semillon Chardonnay, Columbia Crest...
After making over 1 million copies, Buyers Lab has recommended every single meter copier they've ever tested. And that's a record no other major brand of copiers can duplicate.
For sports news around the clock, turn to CNN Headline News. At 20 and 50 minutes after every hour, get the latest sports highlights and scores updated continuously throughout the day. Headline News. Check local cable listings for the channel number in your area.
Welcome back to Crossfire. We're talking about the role of the First Lady and how Hillary Clinton is going to fill that role. Our guests are people who are very familiar with that topic. Anna Perez, press secretary to Barbara Bush. Elaine Crispin, who was Nancy Reagan's press secretary and is now director of public affairs for President Bush's drug program. And joining us from Los Angeles is Susan Estridge, who managed Mike Dukakis' 1988 presidential campaign. Susan, I think you'll agree that Hillary Clinton is more liberal than her husband. Is it okay for her to try to pull her husband's policies to the left?
Well, I don't know. I always get reluctant to play this label game of who's liberal and who's not.
Now, go ahead.
No, well, but during the campaign, it was very troubling to see some conservatives pulling up a law review article Hillary Clinton wrote 20 years ago and saying, aha, we have the goods on this woman.
I haven't mentioned that article.
I know, but why is she more liberal? Hillary Clinton has been outspoken on issues of children and family and education and health care for families. Do I think it's legitimate for her to stand up, whether it's at a speech last night or over the dinner table, and say these are important issues that I care about and I want to help this administration pursue? I think that's great. Does that mean Bill Clinton is going to do everything Hillary Clinton suggests he's going to do? Of course not. I mean, he's the president. She isn't. He's going to make the decisions, and I think she's a welcome voice at the table, and I think as qualified as anyone who has sat in a staff meeting in the White House in recent years.
Do either of you have any problem with Hillary Clinton or any other First Lady using her influence with her husband?
I guess the problem that I have is because Hillary Clinton, for some reason, has a law degree, that all other First Ladies before her were kindergarten dropouts. I mean, we have had some very, very intelligent First Ladies working on very, very important social programs, and I'm sure that they advised their husbands, talked to their husbands.
Made a point of it on Crossfire before that.
Occasionally the press would make some point of influencing a husband, but I think it's what a wife in any good marriage does.
I've been married for 15 years, and we talk about each other's jobs, and I've worked every year of those 15 years, and we talk about each other's jobs all the time. On the other hand, I would no more tell my husband what what film editing machine to buy, then he would tell me how to set up a photo op in the White House. Somehow you trust these adults that are in these positions to know where to draw that line. But the point with Mrs. Clinton is that she does have a history of making policy, of advocating policy in Arkansas. She has very clear views on issues where she wants to make policy, and I think that if she wants to, she should get a job.
I hope she is very upfront about it. And you know, Elaine, my objection to Nancy Reagan was, at times, was that there were things that she denied that she was involved in. Then when My Turn, her book came out, she's involved in all these things like advising the president about the Soviet Union and so on. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about.
Exactly, and she kept a good journal, and yes, the book was a little revealing. But I think, I think we all knew at the time, though, that Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan had a very close marriage. Hopefully, Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton also have a close marriage. And as Anna said, you communicate in a good marriage. You share ideas and views. You are sounding boards one for the other. My problem with this whole, that she'll make policy, I think just as the president needs to do, a first lady has to have an agenda of 3 or 4 priorities. Be successful with those. Don't be all over the drawing board. And if children and parents and the responsibility of parents to children in this country are important, it could solve a lot of our problems.
I have a question for Susan Estridge. Why wouldn't a good feminist have the attitude that I shouldn't have any influence or role in my life simply as an adjunct to my husband? Simply as being first lady should be irrelevant. I should make my own way in the world and not try to exploit my husband's position. Why isn't that the correct feminist posture?
Well, I don't pretend that I'm an expert or anybody is an expert in sort of politically correct feminism. I don't even want to use those words. I think Hillary Clinton has, well, let me finish, Michael. Hillary Clinton has a unique opportunity. She is the first lady. That puts her in a position, as were her predecessors for their own interests, to really influence and shape and stand as a symbol and have an important voice. And it would seem pretty silly to me that a woman with the talents and the interests of Hillary Clinton as First Lady would say, no, I don't want to sit at the table here in the White House. Let me go downtown and work on at a firm on K Street. That would make no sense to me
but there's nothing that stops her as First Lady to talk to the Secretary of Education about ideas that she has for education programs.
But I think
in fairness,
no, Nancy Reagan
didn't here. I think she would take a lot more heat, though, by kind of, she has a choice. If she doesn't get a job and she still wants to make policy, she'll either become a Lady Macbeth, a backdoor Lady Macbeth, or she'll be a Bigfoot. The minute she goes down to the Department of Education and says, I would like to see the secretary, is somebody going to tell her, well, I'm sorry, ma'am? No. Come right in, Mrs. Clinton.
And more than likely, he will come to the White House to see her.
Where are the clear lines of authority? Where is the
clear line of authority, as you know full well, is to the President of the United States, who is responsible, who is elected, and who is accountable. And so long as Hillary Clinton is providing advice to the President, providing aid to the President, making policy suggestions, I think that is entirely appropriate. I think you folks are a little
not without oversight.
Here.
Not
what
without
are we
oversight.
worried about?
Yeah, but Susan,
I mean, what are you worried about?
I'll tell you what I'm worried about, that she's doing things that the public doesn't know about, the press doesn't know about, and is denying them the way Nancy Reagan was.
Fred, and she hasn't been. If she's sinned here at all, it's been because she's open and honest. Look, it would have been very easy for her to not sit at the table in Little Rock, to, sit back in the kitchen, cook the peas, and have Bill Clinton tell her afterwards everything that happened and give her advice. So let me finish. Instead, she was open, sat at the table, and has been very straightforward about her
I would like to hear from Elaine whether she's going to accept these criticisms of Nancy Reagan.
No, Nancy Reagan and I have my own criticisms of Nancy, and we've talked about her book, and actually, for everyone listening, she really wishes she had written a different book.
No doubt.
Afterthought. But I have really no problem with Hillary sitting at the table. I'd like to know the issues that she was more knowledgeable about than the president.
Well,
that would be interesting.
If she was named chairman of the Commission on Women, Families, and Children, had clear lines of authority, clear areas of authority, of accountability, then we would know exactly what her positions were on this, and then the press and the American people would have the ability to judge those policy recommendations just as they would any other person. Granted, there is only one person in this administration, in any administration, that's going to make policy. That's the president. But you've got dozens of people, enormously qualified people, like Hillary Clinton, who are going to make recommendations. I want to know, where are you coming from?
Okay, let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going to ask these press secretaries about a very delicate image problem that the Clintons are going to face and what they would recommend.
Hello, I'm Charles Bierbauer in Washington. At the top of the hour, the Navy is putting officer candidate students on record to make sure they know the service's policy toward homosexuals. We'll have a special assignment report on a tragic shooting that is adding fuel to a clash of cultures. And there are new signs the economy is still sputtering. Those stories and more on Prime News right after Crossfire.
Dave Baldwin may not own a yacht, but like you, he makes sure the kids get new clothes when they need them. These are the basics. And now you can get something back just by the way you pay for them. The new GE Rewards MasterCard. With it, you can earn $10 checks good at places like Macy's and Kmart, and hundreds more in savings certificates. For your GE Rewards MasterCard, just call 1-800-GE-REWARD.
This is Grand Central Station, crossroads of the world, and this is the Pitney Bowes 9070 copier. What we're doing is letting people make free copies on a machine that has in excess of 1 million copies.
This is my best friend. I want to make a copy.
I know you want to make a copy. Come on over.
What do? I lift this up?
Voila. We're still here. It's a little warm, and the machine is still pumping out cool, crisp copies. We've run 1,013,643 copies and had a little gum on the flat glass, but I scraped that off, and the machine is working great.
If you're under a physician's care for high blood pressure, ulcers, or asthma, then your choice of a non-prescription pain reliever is especially important for millions of people like you. The one doctors recommend most is Tylenol.
Gas pressure means pain and bloating. And the way doctors see it, your best choice for relief is Mylanta Gas. It has the best medicine for gas.
Introducing Ford Taurus and Cats and Dogs. Taurus offers dual airbags and anti-lock brakes, perfect for when it's raining cats and dogs. You might say the idea jumped out at us. Ford Taurus.
I don't want to tell you what I really think. I'd support my daughter. I know this voice. Who is this?
Here.
Totally spontaneous. Totally King. Larry King Live. Weeknights on CNN.
I want to ask both these First Ladies, press secretaries. The Clintons face a very delicate problem, which is where to send Chelsea to school. They're great advocates of public education. The natural temptation of anyone moving to Washington who can afford it, unfortunately perhaps, is to send their kid to the private schools. The Gores send their kids to private schools. What would you advise the Clintons to do in this circumstance?
Put their money where their mouth is. But that's so easy for us to say. It's not our child. That's probably one of the most personal decisions a parent can make. As a product of the public schools in New York City, I hope that they send their kids to a public school. But on the other hand, that's not our decision to make. I mean, it's silly I think it's silly for us even to be talking about it, because as I said, that is such a personal decision. This is your blood you're sending out there. But they say they want to be a part of Washington. They want to be good neighbors.
Unfortunately, it's an image problem for the president, no matter what he does. But what would you recommend?
I fortunately, when I moved to Washington in 1981, I moved to Virginia so my daughter could go to high school there. I didn't have to live in Washington. They don't have that choice. If they're just going to send their child to private school without doing something about the school system in Washington, which is a promise that he's made, then I think Anna's right. They better put their money where their mouth is.
Well, I'll follow up on that, Susan. What about it? Where should Chelsea go to school?
Oh, I have no idea. Far be it from me to say, but my guess is agreeing with, I think they'll probably send her to public school would be my guess.
So that's my guess,
They've
too.
been committed to the public schools. They've sent her to school in Little Rock,
right.
and those schools they're working on it, but those schools have a way to go, too.
Right. Let me ask you one other question about Hillary and her political role. In Arkansas, she played a role in picking judges. Should she do that as First Lady at the White House? And if so, don't you think she should tell the public that she's playing that role?
Well, I don't think she's been hidden about what her role has been, Fred. I think she's been very upfront. What's important to me is that Hillary is playing a role in areas where she's qualified based on background, experience, and education to play a role. With all due respect to Mrs. Reagan, what troubled me was not simply that I didn't know the role she was playing, but that astrology seemed to be the basis for some of it.
All right, we got to cut off there. Thank you, Susan Estridge. Thank you, Elaine Crispin.
Thank you,
Anna Perez.
Thank you.
The boys will be back in just a moment.
like any other month for the Fitzgeralds. A month that saw more trips to more stores than they could remember. But because they used their new GE Rewards MasterCard, they received hundreds of dollars in savings certificates, as well as $10 checks. Good whether you're going to Macy's or Mexico. Which is why next month won't be at all like last month for the Fitzgeralds. The GE Rewards MasterCard. Call 1-800-GE-REWARD.
From brilliant celebrations to a simple lunch on the deck. From 1,000 activities to the joy of doing nothing at all. A kindness that comes easily. A genuine warmth. For a century and more, we've been preparing for a ship as magnificent as the Stockendown. Come, be among the first to experience her charms. An elegant new ship, a grand tradition. The good times of Holland America.
Introducing Ford Taurus Wagon and the bags. While all wagons have room for bags in back, only Ford has wagons in this class with 2 bags up front, keeping Taurus out front in safety. Ford Taurus Wagon.
The way a professional wine taster samples a fine wine, such as a Chardonnay from Columbia Crest, is by taking a sip, swirling it around, and then spitting it out. Fortunately, we amateurs are allowed to swallow.
Tonight, a Japanese exchange student out to party heads for the wrong house. It was a fatal mistake. CNN Special Assignment talks with the man who says fear forced him to fire on Prime News, 8 p.m. Eastern tonight.
For a transcript, send $5 to Journal Graphics Incorporated, 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203, or call 303-831-9000.
Fred, you and Anna Perez say that if Hillary wants to have any influence, she should make it official and take an official job. You know that she would get savage for nepotism if she ever tried to do that. She cannot win with people like you.
Oh, sure she can. She's a blank sheet. I'm going to judge her by what she does. Here's what I want. I just want her to define the areas in which she's going to try to influence her husband. If she